Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. This is Greg Palmer, and we are wrapping up our conversations with the FinovateSpring 2026 Best of Show winners. If you haven't already done so over the past couple of weeks, just a reminder, all of the demo videos from FinovateSpring are available at finovate.com/videos. You can see our 5 Best of Show winners there, along with everybody else who shared their innovations with our audience in San Diego a little bit more than a month ago. Today, we've got a fun one. Rounding out our Best of Show winners, we have Caitlyn Truong, the CEO and co-founder of Zengines. Caitlyn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be reconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, congratulations on taking home one of those trophies. Before we get too far, I'd like to just have you give a little bit of background on yourself and Zengines.
Sure. So as it relates to my career and capabilities, I started out as a software and hardware engineer, tinkering with circuits in the telecom space. And then I moved to consulting, where I was solving problems with tech and data, mostly serving FS financial services clients. And that's where my co-founders and I kept running into this problem of the need to ensure data usefulness and data traceability throughout all enterprise types of transformations or initiatives. So we saw this problem, decided to solve it in a better way. And that's why and how Zengines was born and how I'm here today.
No, that's excellent. And I think that kind of hands-on experience is always such a good place to start when you're looking at where can I make a difference. So I think the first thing we have to talk about right out of the gate is the Sherlock Holmes persona that you brought to your demo. That's obviously the first kind of visual you gave to our attendees in the audience there. So I'd like to just start by asking, why was that the right kind of image, the right kind of style to start with for your demo?
Yes. So first, I have to share my appreciation to one of my awesome customers, Greg, because it was his visualization of how we were solving this problem, where he shared that what Zengines is doing is shining a light into the black box. And that has stuck with me since he expressed it that way. And so I wanted to make sure that there was a chance to have the audience understand that it's a mystery, that there are some of these legacy applications that exist that over the years, so much has been built on top of it, so much has changed around it. And then a lot of the SMEs that once designed, coded, or managed it are no longer as available. So this concept of something that was a mystery, how do we solve it? How do we make sure that it becomes something that business can finally crack the nut on or understand once again? Felt that Sherlock Holmes was just a quick visual as well as an easy way to orient folks into understanding that's the type of problem we're solving.
Well, it certainly worked on me. I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan and all the iterations going back to the original stories through the latest TV reincarnations of him. So I think it certainly worked to capture the audience's attention and kind of get them thinking along the right way. I want to ask about another phrase which popped up a lot during your demo. We'll talk a little bit more about Zengines in just a minute, but before we do, I just want to get some of the terminology. One of the phrases that came up a lot is data lineage, which obviously is a central thrust of what you're going to be talking about. Can you go into a little bit more detail on what exactly you mean by data lineage when you talk about it?
Sure. So at its most simple form, data lineage is the tracking of data from its origin to its destination. And in today's world, I would say that organizations look for data lineage information to help them be able to trace data. So a lot of the tools in the marketplace today are helping someone know what that pathway is. So that's the start of data lineage. And I would share that what Zengines has done is provide this next level of comprehensiveness as well as context and explainability to not just what the pathway is, but why did it exist and how did it get there and what were the reasons for some of the pathway branches. So in that way, it's more than just the surface level data lineage, but for Zengines, because we get down into the weeds of the code, it's more like data lineage based on contextual code intelligence.
Sure. Well, why is that so important? Why is it important to really get down into the weeds there?
Because the problem that a lot of organizations have in the financial services space, as well as other industries that either are regulated or have applications that started 30, 40, 50 years ago, is the need to really understand that what was happening in the core. So the core tends to be a very central system that manages the transactions, right? It holds all of this data. It is the heart and the brains of the business. And if you are in a regulated industry, you will find that there are a lot of regulations and audit requirements associated with providing evidence to understanding what happened to your data. So that will literally show up in some of these regulations that are mandated to these organizations. So that's kind of driver number one. I would say sometimes that's the stick when you think about the stick or the carrot. But the other use cases include the one that I would say is the most highest volume one, which is the organizations looking to modernize or get through transformation initiatives. And in that case, it's the how do we de-risk some of these legacy applications for whatever reason, right? Not necessarily because it's old or non-performing. In fact, the opposite is true. But in other cases, it's just I want to be able to continuously manage this, even though the population is shrinking. I want to be able to put changes on this and understand it and de-risk it. So that tends to be the second use case. And then finally, the last one that I would say is the one driving the biggest buzz as of late is ensuring your data is AI ready. And that includes having a certain level of trust because you can trace and explain that data.
Yeah, no, and obviously this is a massive undertaking when you think about how far you have to go to really uncover all the answers here. Talk to me about the different sizes or shapes of financial institutions that you're working with. Do you find the challenges or their core systems change in a meaningful way between, larger banks and smaller banks, or are these kind of issues universal enough that most financial institutions will experience them in pretty similar ways?
I say that the concept of data lineage or having context to the logic, to the code that's running your core applications, Greg, is absolutely universal. That said, Zengines was specific in solving this pain point for a specific population. And we felt we were tackling the missing puzzle piece of one of the most important puzzle pieces, which is the legacy applications. So the core applications that were written in COBOL or RPG or PL1 and some of these older code bases. So that first and foremost is one of the areas that we say this is one of our target prospects is organizations that have these legacy applications written in this code. And the second piece is that they really have a driver for wanting to understand whether that's those use cases we talked about, right? Whether it's a mandate because of some regulatory driver, or they're going through change, or they need to be sure that they are taking advantage of some of the AI pieces. And one of the things that I shared during the demo was that 92 out of the top 100 banks have a COBOL core, a mainframe core, Greg. And then more than 50% of the credit unions and regional banks, which is that next tier of organizations in terms of size, have a RPG core. So I would say there is still a high volume of organizations that have a need to understand some of these applications written in some of these older code bases.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting about the different types of cores that they have. And this is something which probably is not news to folks who are on one side of that divide or the other. I want to now get more into Zengines. And obviously, you don't have to recreate the entire demo here. People who are curious can go and take a look at the 7 minutes that you put up in front of our audience as a way to kind of really get a sense of what it's all about. But I'm curious, how would you describe Zengines and what are you able to do that others in the space aren't able to do?
As mentioned, we started with this problem of being able to answer a question for the business and allow them to get an answer to their core application for something that they were needing to understand, but it took them a really long time to get that response back. So in today's world, what that might look like is a business team going through a transformation effort, and they are looking to move some data, change some data, and they run into a reconciliation break, and they don't know why there is a difference in the data. So if they could, they would navigate and traverse and find that answer themselves by looking at the application. But when it's a black box and they aren't able to access that, that became a problem. Their current avenue of getting to an answer would be to wait for a SME to become available and get that response back from that SME. And then you hope that you found the right SME because, as you know, some of these applications have a large sprawl. And so not any one SME knows everything around that application. So that was really the initial driver of this, to say, how do we make sure that business analysts, data analysts, compliance analysts, tech analysts are able to fully understand or get any answer out of some of these legacy applications. So that was where we started. And what we saw was an ability to truly give them that ability to get an answer out of any question. And that's because we ingest the full code base and we make sure that we provide true clarity comprehensively and accurately around all of the data conditions and logic that cause that to happen. Again, this is the difference between a more surface level data lineage product versus Zengines, which is the data lineage way of exposing the information, but expanding it to include the context of what happened, why, and how. And that way you really can give that level of granularity of explaining, hey, this happens because it's a security or a bond, or this only happens because it's month end. All of those are conditions that business needs to understand in order to either respond to regulatory compliance or to get through change and still operate a very important business.
That's a really good summary of it. So one of the things we think about, obviously bankers will view these solutions in a certain way. End users of a financial institution don't necessarily experience things like what an upgrade to the core system or smoothing out of the compliance project. But sometimes those banking end users can have a good sense of when their financial institution is engaged with a new piece of technology because all of a sudden they're able to do something that they couldn't do before. So my question is just, are there any forward-facing elements that an end user might notice once their financial institution starts to use Zengines?
Absolutely. First and foremost is the speed with which they can get an answer to their inquiries. So in today's experience, it would be that they might start with a question, and it might not be the real question that gets them the answer that they want. And they will need to wait for a SME to become available in order to get a response. But using Zengines, it is now a SaaS application. A user can log in and you can see that it's a self-service type of experience. So whether that user is looking to simply navigate and learn more about the application, be able to get quick summaries and context around this module or this variable, all of that happens in seconds, which is a complete game-changing experience from today's world of taking days, weeks, or months in order to get a response. So that would be first and foremost the experience that they might see right away. The second thing that we have received very positive feedback on is the ability to be comprehensive. So organizations have a lot of data governance tools. They might have other data management type tools. But if you're missing information from the core, you will know that's hard to manage a whole organization if you don't have one of your most important applications. So bringing this into the picture to have teams have higher trust in their data and the traceability, again, that whole point around being AI ready, et cetera. So I would say it's the speed, it's the self-service, and it's the ability to truly have confidence and trust in the data.
Yeah. And I think these are the things that consumers absolutely can and do pick up on, right? So much as we sometimes think, what happens in the fintech bubble stays in the fintech bubble. These ripple effects can have really significant outcomes in terms of a bank's bottom line. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your experience at Finovate and particularly the response that you had at your booth. Now, obviously, what you were saying on stage resonated with the audience. You can see that just from the fact that they voted for you. But what types of conversations or responses did you have after your demo? Did you get the sense that people stopping by had a good understanding of what you're showing to them? Or were there any kind of unusual conversations or unusual folks who you weren't necessarily expecting to connect with, but ended up having fruitful conversations with?
First, Greg, I want to also share a compliment to you and to the Finovate team because this conference was really professionally run. The production of it was superb. And the coaching that you shared and what you encouraged all of the startups to do was a great experience. So in that way, just sharing my compliments and the team's appreciation for having the ability to share awareness of our product to the marketplace. And secondly, yes, I would share that what happened from a demo stage perspective to the booth was a very positive experience, which was on stage. It was important to be able to explain the product, be sure that we were reflecting on the problem and making it relevant to the prospects for whom it mattered. And in doing that, it was very helpful that the interested parties that came by the booth after the demo were very, it was a targeted experience. They said, oh, for sure, I have this pain point. Oh my goodness, I have this system and it is written that code and I've never been able to quickly get answers out of that. So it was the ability to make it relevant and have enough of explaining that problem to a whole audience that could have been different types from different functional areas. So all of that meant that when they came to the booth, it was something that had intrigued them. It was a pain point that they could empathize with. And then we had a very targeted conversation and they were able to see more of our product at the booth. So for that, it was a very positive experience in bringing really relevant and very exciting conversations. You love it when you can talk about problems and pain points with others and have a very relevant conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's kind of what Finovate's all about, bringing people together who understand these pain points, who understand the challenges that we're all facing here as well. Last question for you. What advice do you have for companies who are participating in Finovate for the first time? We have Finovate Fall coming up this September. We're going to have a lot of new companies there. Is there anything that you'd recommend to them about how to get the most out of their Finovate experience?
Sure. So it's a two-part answer. First is to take advantage of the prep time with you. I know that we had a chance to meet with you. You gave us some coaching, etc. And with that, it was very on point coaching in the sense that when someone has a moment to share something about a product that they love so much and that they've spent a lot of hours and sweat and toil building, you want to be able to show that, right? And you want to be able to hopefully say as much as you can. But it was really important to be thoughtful around maximizing the 7 minutes. And in that way, I say it was to expose enough information to interest the audience, but be sure that you can also hook and or captivate the targeted prospects that are important to you, because it is just enough to have them say, oh, I can relate to this. I have this pain point and I'd like to learn more. And that's how, to the previous question, I would say it really optimized the experience for us, which is think about those 7 minutes as sure a way to hopefully grow awareness, but make sure that you are also reflecting enough of the information just to get someone interested to come back and talk to you after the demo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 7 minutes is not a ton of time, but it's plenty of time to plant some hooks. And so this is something that I always recommend as well, to kind of make sure that you have a really good sense of what your most important pieces are. And again, clearly what you were able to do really worked well. It resonated well with our audience and ultimately culminated in the fact that you were able to take home a trophy. So I just want to say congratulations again. Thank you for taking the time to connect with me here today. And for those of you who are listening, this does conclude our Best of Show Winner series. We'll take a week off from the podcast next week, and then we'll get things going again with our usual fare until we get to Finovate Fall and have another great slate of Best of Show Winners from that event as well. So Caitlyn, thank you so much again for joining me, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's been great partnering with you.
Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.